Let's turn to business now. Madison Reedy's joined us. Madison, so first consumer confidence survey of the year. It's out. What does it say about what we're up to? Are we spending?
Yes, we are spending, and we feel pretty good about spending too, is what this survey said. So this was the ANZ Consumer Confidence Survey. So it fell just 1 point. It's pretty flat and steady at 121 for this month of February. And that's because consumers are feeling better about their own financial situation. So we and the rest of the country is apparently feeling better about their own finances. They say that it's a good time for them to buy big ticket items. That's typically furniture and whiteware as well. But they are still slightly worried about the future of the economy. Now that probably ties in with all of this talk about global economic conditions worsening when you look at Brexit stalling and also talk of the US-China trade war ongoing. Now when you compare that to the business confidence survey that we had yesterday, that was the first one of the year too. Now that actually showed that businesses are feeling a lot more gloomy than previously. So if you remember last year, this was a pretty big story. Businesses were largely upset for
the elephant in the room, as it was called.
The elephant in the room, which actually was addressed by the Prime Minister. I was there when she actually addressed it. So the businesses are feeling a little bit more gloomy again. So their index in February fell 7 points. Now that basically swallowed half of the gains that they actually made in December. So as we just mentioned, the elephant in the room was them feeling pretty upset last year. But heading into Christmas, they actually perked up. Now all of that is pretty much undone. And that's not just because they have less Christmas parties on their calendar. They actually say that it's because they're struggling to pass on their rising costs of doing business onto customers.
Interesting. Residential building consents. Well, this is interesting. They're at a 44-year high.
They are. So official figures from Statistics New Zealand came out today and said that the annual number of consents is the same as it was in 1975. So our annual consents issued are at 33,500 for the year to January. Now that's mostly for standalone houses as usual. Typically also more of those are in Auckland, but it does continue to be driven up by more townhouses, units and flats being consented there as well. Now when Stats New Zealand actually broke down these numbers per capita compared to the mid-70s, it turns out that in the way back then there was actually only 3 million people in New Zealand. There's now nearly 5 million people in New Zealand. So when you actually break down the number of consents issued per capita, actually we only had about half the growth that we saw back then. So to be on par with where we actually were in the 70s, would need to be issuing about 70,000 building residential consents per year. That's twice as many as we issued in the year to January.
All right, so the packaging, the thing inside is not as good as the packaging, it would seem, when you crunch the numbers.
Exactly, and obviously those are just consents, not actually homes built, we should always point out.
Can't live in a consent, as I know someone likes to say. What's been happening on the markets today?
The NZX Top 50 Index closed up 0.25% tonight. That's 27 points to close at 9,352, and the New Zealand dollar is buying at 68.1 US cents, 96 to the Australian and 51.4 British pence.